So welcome, cultivators. Today we have a very exciting interactive workshop with one of our members on Fire, actually, Clemens. He's going to be sharing about persona mapping and design incentives to help us build better communities. So Clemens, on to you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. So my name is Clemens Wan. I'm a solution architect for ConsenSys. It's a startup company that builds Ethereum. And I would say that my history has been within financial services. I'm highly technical. I, have a bachelor's and master's in computer science coding. I did multiple stints at universities for research projects in AI and autonomous vehicles, machine learning, for robotics. And then I joined a financial company, as most people do, and I started building trading applications. So I built some credit eTrading applications. And then I got caught into crypto and spent the past 6 years or so building enterprise-based crypto-based applications as well. So during that time, the past 4 years, I've really spent in a role around consulting. So I haven't really done any real work with a big consulting company like McKinsey, but I'm self-taught and kind of went through the full process. I've held dozens of different workshops and a lot of lessons learned from that. So here I wanted to share with you a few different things that I've worked on and hopefully provide with you a different community creation approach, but also walk through some real live examples that I've created. So the first one is around the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. So I've been working with the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance for the past 4 years or so. It at the peak had 600 institutional members running around 20 different working groups. It's since then consolidated specifically to building specifications and to harnessing the members' powers. So I'm going to switch to a proposal that I had created for a few of these executives to kind of figure out what the goals are for building the community and what short-term as well as long-term OKRs would be. So this took about maybe a few hours to build, but it essentially started off with thinking about the different industry personas. Are you able to read this, or is it way too small to read?
I can read it.
Okay, great. So as a background, right, the EEA, with this membership, the members join in order to participate in these working groups and to create different specifications. And so what this was building out was a high-level approach in order to prioritize different actions that could help with reaching the EEA's OKRs. And so what I did at first was map out different high-level industry personas, what their wants, needs, and inquiries would be to the organization. I would connect those to an EEA set of deliverables. So how can different members contribute and be active members, and then indicate different upsides to the greater good of the ecosystem that I'm building out here, and then brainstorm eventually on how my company can contribute to the EEA itself. So short-term goals. And so I'm not going to go through this line by line, but just as an example, the persona could be a DevOps person. DevOps is basically someone that handles mostly the infrastructure for creating these different networks. And so they may aim to go live and they need to scale. And so what they ask the EEA, and this is kind of part of the exercise, is imagine your ecosystem as a service, and you would say, what are some best practices for creating an internal private network that's built on Ethereum? What is an easy guide that I can follow so that I can build something out for my own company? And so on and so forth as a set of questions. And then as deliverables, what you can do is say, well, what type of resources can we build and share externally so that we don't have to get on calls all the time? And that could be an EEA DevOps test guide. And this would be a set of ready to deploy experimental applications as well as a best practices guide. You map that to the upside. So the upside for the greater ecosystem would be there's more enterprise-based developers that are experimenting with their own test nets. And then in terms of an OKR, it can increase participation to a working group, as well as increase member collaboration and answer any number of requests. You can get more, these are high value members that really devote their own time and try to be kind of star members of a community, and you want to use the most out of those parties that are altruistically just being awesome people contributing to the ecosystem. You can do this type of mapping for architects, for business management. You can think about different deliverables like full ecosystem stack if you're looking at connecting between different existing applications, different types of workshops. And this exercise continues for quite a few different parties, but these are specifically personas that represent people and the roles that they play and the incentives that they have to deliver to their organization. And the questions that they ask are usually about their job and also part of their incentives. So this can include, for example, front office. If you're someone that works in the front office, you care less about the tech and more about the use cases that are being developed. What is the return on investment? What's the business impact? And so you may look for different trials or be a part of a community that gives you opportunities to join these trials, to join different experiments so that you can prove to your organization that you're using this technology properly. As an output, you would have a greater increase of collaboration across members, as well as building a better knowledge base. So I don't want to go through all the examples, but what you wind up building is these target state offerings, and you can group them together. So here, for example, one of them could be a single source of knowledge for all things involved with Enterprise Ethereum. And you can create onboarding guides if that's missing. You can look at different pieces of data, like what's the market activity. You can look at ecosystem mapping. So who's developing in the ecosystem? How do they contribute their applications? How to describe them? You can do further tech stack deep dive. So any types of technology that they're using and anything that you can mimic and build upon, you can represent that. Any type of libraries that you can provide. So some of these are much more, developer specific, but I think the target state goals are fairly applicable. You can have an offering around ecosystem memberships. So if these are paying memberships, what do they gain access to, and how do you use their resources to contribute to the greater good of that ecosystem? And that could also be partnerships. So a member is someone that has joined to pay and to be a part of this group because some resources are being, surfaced that they find important. A partner would be adjacent organizations or companies that may not fit directly as members, but could just be, partners for creating content or partners for sharing content. So you may have for example, within blockchain, it's a very small space, but whenever one company wants to share a press release, there's a partnership of media people that you can send your press releases to so that they can share it to all of their contacts. So it's the networks of networks effect is within partnerships. And then finally, you can think about a marketplace for both of them. So if partners are also selling some type of service to your members, then you can also connect those together. So if you have partners that, want to hire you for building out their network and then want to connect someone else for building out the top of stack application, all of these are kind of moving incentives that you can foster. You can do a member to partner relationship, or you can do a member to member relationship where you're combining multiple parties together, joining them for some type of project formation, or as long as it's not IP sensitive, some type of brainstorming exercise. So after you do these steps and think about your target offerings, you can think about this prioritization rubric. So I've built this multiple times in different lights, but what you do is you think about what is aligned to your vision, what has a return on investment with respect to your key results and objectives, and how much effort does it take to complete it, how much effort does it take to maintain it, and what is the value to the overall group. You don't have to follow these directly, but these are also very good for weighting because not all of these are perfectly weighted as equal. You can put a different weight to this. And so what you do with this is you take that initiative specifically, like for example, an onboarding guide for new EEA members, and you say, does this align to my vision? How important is that? What is the return on investment? How much effort does it take to build this out? And then you create eventually a total score that adds and multiplies by the weights to figure out what is the most important initiative. And you can say one could be, update the website so it's easier to use, create a better collateral management system, or create, better usage of the existing members and partners, or do different level packages. So different initiatives that you group together, what you want to do is rank them into what's most feasible, but also what aligns with your project's overall vision. Okay, and then at the very, very end, what you can do is, based on the initiatives, provide any comments, build them into slides as needed, and then eventually survey the members. So if you already have a very strong, participation or non-participation, what you can think about is enter in, what are you doing with the group? How are you currently being a part of it? And then ask them some of the questions of which forward-looking initiatives could be most impactful. And what you can do is distill these questions and list the initiatives and say, well, we can only do one of these. Why don't we ask our members what would be the most interesting to pursue? And then use that feedback to allocate your resources towards it. And so finally, what you distill into, and this is me doing some, a large exercise just to think about how I can work with this company, is to say, in the short term, by the end of the year, what are the tangible initiatives that we're going to move forward? What are things that we're directly, contributing? And then these are just examples of diagrams that we've drawn and contributors and feedback that we've gotten. Okay, that was a lot, but I feel like it was good to walk through a real example and to think about, if this was your particular project at scale, what would that look like? And just to summarize, I'm going to go back to this slide, and then we can do something more interactive. The high-level community approach is really thinking about the purpose and commonality of parties that have joined this network. So why are they coming together? What activities would be ideal to share? How do you maximize the scale of participation? Sometimes a group of 10 people on a call is just right, and you don't want 100 people on a call. Sometimes it's, what is the extent of your existing number of resources that you can say, I can only handle, 5 people participating, or I can only handle this number. And so you can dream about what that maximum utilization is and then work backwards from there. And then for personas, so user experience and kind of general persona mapping is a very long number of courses. There's hundreds of courses and people get very protective of this process. But I just look at it at a very high level of reviewing your existing membership and then looking at your target membership. So persona being who is most engaged and what attributes make them a good fit to this community. And then who would you like to ideally join? Is it just through word of mouth, or are there other methods of getting them included? And then also, what is the ideal diversity of those participants? Do you want all developers, or do you want some business people involved? Do you want different opinions and kind of conflicts that are healthy inside of the membership? And then finally, look at the incentives of these personas. Why are they participating? How are they participating? And why do they come back? And these are all, very high level questions, but when you think them through and you start to classify the individuals that contribute the most time, you start to target more high value members. So it's sometimes about quality over quantity, and the high quality members becomes your starting base for any product usage, any alpha testing or beta testing that you might have. Okay, so I do not usually do that many slides when I work with people in real time. There's a lot of different apps that I use. The two that I wanted to mention today, one is called userbit app. I use it for general kind of stakeholder interview questions, as well as building of personas. So I'm going to show you a quick view of what that looks like. And the second one is Miro, which is a real-time collaboration online website. So let's see what that looks like. I'm going to exit this. Oh, any questions so far? Because I'm going to send over a link to you guys.
Have you ever heard of growth hackers, Clemens?
No, what's growth hackers?
It's like they do, it just, the rubric you put together kind of reminded me of it. It's a kind of growth marketing company that they sort of have built this platform that helps like you build out experiments that you're trying to test, and they use like a weighted kind of formula to determine like, is this a feasible experiment to run? How hard is it? What's the impact? What's the effort that goes into something like that? And it helps you determine like what experiments are worth running depending on where you're at. So it's just interesting because it reminded me of your rubric as well.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I'll take a look at it. Growth hackers. Okay, I shared a link in the chat. It is to this Miro board, which should be open for anyone to join. And then I just wanted to, as you guys are joining, I wanted to show this other application that I use. It's called userbit app. And the idea is to use the interviews you have with different parties and start to tag them and extract any type of qualitative analysis off of it, as well as build personas. So you start off with different interviews for different groups of parties. You ask them a bunch of questions. You can do this in any type of sending of questionnaires. And then what you wind up doing is you can, in the questionnaires, tag. So there's features to literally go into the answers and highlight them and be able to add tags to them. And so you can see the bunch of highlights that are associated with each of the interview questions. You can tag them for understanding of what it impacts in terms of your set of features. And then there's a set of analytics that are associated with it. So you can have feature requests based on different interviews and extract off of that, or pain points associated to that. And these insights that are drawn to it can be connected to your personas. So the personas can be connected to the actual people that you speak with. And just to kind of give you a high level view, a persona is not meant to be an actual person. It's just the attributes of that person. And so this is just randomly generated, but what you can add in is taglines, attributes of this person, the goals that they have, the frustrations they may have, their demographics, their amount of technical expertise. And then when you create your insights, you can link them to the personas so that you can see, this particular person really wants picture sharing or something similar to that. And so this tool has been growing for the past year and a half, 2 years now, and more features are coming out just to extract out of it what the journey is for these parties. There's journey mapping. There's a free version of this, but you can see, as you're developing your application, this might be for, I guess, more traditional web apps instead of generalized viewing of different ecosystem mapping for communities, which is much more, there's less of a one interface for it, and it's much more of a how do I contribute to it. But it's an interesting product. You can feel free to look through it. You can build out your sitemaps for it. It's fairly interactive, and you can. It's a good starting point for validating your use cases. Okay, so I shared with you this Miro board, and I just wanted to show kind of some of the power behind it. We use this for different advisory workshops. So literally having a full day workshop for 9 hours with a bunch of executives sitting around a corner, and most of them are zooming in and filling out different questionnaires. You can look at the templates tab and just insert in a lot of different really interesting frameworks. There's tables. I kind of dropped some of them in there already. There's bullseye scales where you can take and move around these little post-it notes and coordinate what's coming up as a good product feature. I've seen this as a good idea for brainstorming and using these voting dots. So you can create voting dots and you have a limited number of votes, but once you come up with a number of features, you can move them around and say, well, I want to vote on this particular brainstorming idea that's interesting, and you can distribute your votes that way and then tally up which idea has the most votes. So it's a really fun interactive tool, and it's useful for creating persona maps. You can look down here. This is just one for a store, but you can imagine this as different channels for different participants. And then build out your different channels like the website, the Slack channel, your LinkedIn, your Eventbrite, all of these different aspects, and then brainstorm with your team. How can I decrease the cost of this entire process? How can I increase the participation across multiple parties? And yeah, you can move things around for importance. We've used this for prioritizing different features as well as this is another method, another business school set of canvases that you may come across. It's to think about the value chain and think about what activities and map them to the value chain. Cool. I know I have a lot of content and I could probably talk about this for hours, but I would rather answer questions and kind of shape this rest of the 10 minutes or so to these questions.
Do you use both of these tools in tandem, or do you prefer one over the other?
So the userbit tool is much more for my personal notes. I just like the way I can paste things in there and highlight them. And then I just have a bunch of insights across multiple sites that I've gone to. And then I extract them and I can share them with my team. They have read-only versions of it as well. It's called Userbit app. I don't know if that's... Oh, I've used Mural. I've used Miro. Mural is much more corporate. They have a lot of corporate accounts. Miro is free, open source, and probably not open source. It's at least free to use for a single person, and you can invite as many people as you want to it. And yeah, I just wanted to add some takeaways as well before I forget. So look at creating personas for your core community, understand why they join and come back, keep mind of your OKRs, so objectives, key results, and create deliverables to facilitate those OKRs, run some sessions using these tools, and then iterate on the campaigns as needed. So create a campaign to say, maybe you want to grow a certain number of parties from one community, extract them into it, or merge multiple communities together. So cultivators may be similar to your landscape of other quote unquote competitors, or they could be cooperators. And then you can extract similar people contributing to those groups. Cool. Any questions?
Not for me, thanks. This was really interesting. I'm trying to think of when I might be able to use Miro in the near future for some sort of brainstorming activity, but it's cool that it's free, at least for one user.
Yeah, and then you can invite multiple users to edit. So during that exercise, you would own the map, but then multiple parties can. And I could probably spend a whole session just going through a Miro exercise of what we do in workshops. It's essentially, having everyone join, entering in a structured view of questions, and then moving these widgets, moving these post-its around to prioritize which actions. So I guess what I've done is the output of some type of Miro starting point workshop.
Nice.
Clemens, quick question to ask. Thank you, by the way, for presenting. It's awesome. So a persona mapping was not done. I was given a task and the project phase 1 has been launched. I would like to go back and ask the stakeholders questions about things they like most about this particular platform, what is working, what's not working, and what's their wish list. Can I integrate from your experience a persona? I can kind of do that sort of backwards. Yep.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be at the beginning of a project. Most parties use this when they have existing members and they want to grow members. And so it's an exercise of retrospective as well, and saying,
Okay.
well, maybe my distribution of membership looks like this, but I want it to look more like this because it could be more effective. And so these personas are not always, you know, perfectly aligned, but they are your customers and your partners and your users. And so it's good to understand what they want, understand how they use your platform, and how they want to be involved.
Thank you. That's a great feedback. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a question regarding kind of really understanding your personas. I think it's easy for us to come up with hypotheses of like who we believe would be a good fit for said community and things like that, and what their interests are. But how do you really measure that data, and how do you really collect that data? I'm assuming through like feedback surveys, where your recruitment strategies and things like that. But I'm like, for me, I'm always curious to learn more about the cultivators community and how we can better address their needs and help them make progress on their initiatives. I will openly admit, like, there can be a challenge when trying to get that data from people of like what it is that they need and they want, because honestly, most people don't even know what they want or need. So how do we extract that as community managers and leaders?
Yeah, you'd be surprised that sometimes like the maybe it's the questions that you ask that provide what might be like a little bit of feedback, but it's actually big data points. So it could be a simple question of what is the most impactful thing that you get from cultivators, and then being able to gather that in such a way that you can emphasize more of those events, and then create feedback loops on those events. So these would be the campaigns that you would run, is have clear outcomes for those campaigns, but also have clear targets for the campaigns. It is tough to collect data. I don't have a good answer for that. I think everyone's always paying big companies to from advertising point of views to collect that data, and it's not great, but that's what people do to figure out where people spend their attention. I think that's kind of the new value, is where do you spend your attention? There's just so many distractions and so many things that you can spend time on. You choosing to work on something is fairly important, and you choosing to attend a meeting is fairly important. So keeping that fairly tight, but also understanding, even for your own iPhone usage or smartphone usage, how do I use my device, and then how do I want to reduce the usage of it, or use fewer game apps and more productive apps. So this is all just a bigger question about how do people engage, and how do you get them to focus on one thing for half an hour, right? So I don't know if there's a good answer to where the data comes from, or who you might think fits the persona, and what those hypotheses are, but you can make kind of general views of which types of parties could be interesting, and then test it out. And then if you want to try something very radical, maybe go for different industry backgrounds. You can go for, there's probably a list of 30 I can come up with that just looks at cross sections of different interesting areas. Maybe it could be side projects, could be writing circles, it could be looking at different shared hobbies within the community, and then seeing which one of those take off. So there's a lot of random ideas that you can come up with, and then iterate on that.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Clemens, for this. I know people still have more questions, and I'm really excited to go and rewatch this on our YouTube to capture more ideas and ask follow-up questions. We do actually have a persona mapping channel that Clemens started, so please feel free to share your questions there, and maybe work together on persona mapping within your own organizations. So until next time, cultivators, we'll see you again very soon. And thank you everyone for joining. Have a great Wednesday. Bye, everyone.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Clemens.
you all. Bye-bye. Thank you, Clemens.